Welcome to Three of Skeins Knit and Crochet Podcast, number 103. I'm Lisa.
I'm Chris.
And we've got some stuff.
Sweet.
Oh, hi. Please like and subscribe.
It makes our mom happy.
Oh, and I want to invite everyone to Sunday Sit and Stitch. If you go to our website, which I haven't changed the name of yet, so it's called the Knit Sheet, but we're going to change that soon. There is a Sit and Stitch link. We get together on Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern.
And if you would like show notes, we actually send those out as our newsletter. So we'll put a link below for the sign up page for the newsletter. And the show notes will have, all the links to the things we mentioned, names of all the yarns we talk about, books, designers, all that kind of stuff. So we want to just kind of have all of that handy. Sign up for the newsletter.
Oh, okay, housekeeping out of the way. Chris, I'm really excited about what you're doing.
I don't know why. She gets so weird about my projects. I don't get it.
They're so cool.
Okay, so I'm starting my cardigan. If you remember, it's going to have like all these different orange yarns.
Tell them the name.
Okay, it's more of a nickname. It is Autumn-tacular Fall Explosion. I don't know why. But I'm using three like very, very different orange multicolored yarns. Here are two of them. So I wanted to bring in another yarn to blend them together a little bit better. So I have my trusty Baroque Ultra Wool fingering weight, and I'm using it to create like a border between each, because this whole cardigan is going to be stripes. So it's going to be stripes of each of the orange yarns. It's going to be 6 stripes. So as I transition from one stripe to the next, I'm going to have a border in just my solid orange yarn. And so here is my swatch.
Wow.
So these squares are done with Mosaic. And so I just have a solid orange stripe, then my squares, and then another stripe. And I feel like it just kind of smooths out the transition from one orange to the next. And I feel like it makes all of my different oranges make a lot more sense.
I think so too.
But yeah, I have a Mosaic pattern book. I was trying to like adapt one of the patterns from the book, and that wasn't working out because I feel like I don't understand Mosaic well enough to change an existing pattern.
Gotcha.
But so I just kind of figured this out on the hook myself. I actually need to figure out how to write this as a pattern so that I can remember how I did it. But yeah, I ended up figuring out this is very similar to the squares that I did for Janky Vest. So I kind of had an idea how to make a square using Mosaic crochet. And so that's just kind of what I referenced. And then I added these 2 stripes because I don't know, it just kind of softened the effect. Having this same orange in both colored stripes, I felt kind of unified them.
Yeah.
So.
Can you show them the back? I was very surprised because I'm sitting next to you. I can see it. It looks completely different on the back than it looks on the front.
The way you do Mosaic crochet, see, you have some chains in certain rows, and then on the front, wherever you have those chains, you're going to work double crochets over those chains. So you're actually working a couple of rows below when you do your double crochets. And so basically you're using the chains to make spaces, and then you're using the double crochets to fill in those spaces with color so that you can place your color where you want it to be. So you kind of have to think of like the negative space at the same time while you're doing Mosaic. But it's surprisingly not that difficult because it's still a very linear process. And for me, that's just how my mind works. You're only ever working in one color yarn at a time. So it's not like in Tarja where you're changing colors across the row. You do 2 rows in A, then 2 rows in B, 2 rows in A, and 2 rows in B, always. So I find Mosaic actually deceptively simple.
Nice.
And that's how I'm doing my border effect.
Now, what are you going to do about the ends? Is that going to leave you a lot of ends?
No, because it's going to leave some ends.
Yeah.
As I add in, so every time I started a new color, I have an end here.
Right.
However, and when I finish each stripe, just, you're working stripes, you're going to have to cut off the old stripe. But because you're working an even number of rows, you can carry your yarn.
Okay.
So as you see, I have no ends on this side. And I have, the ends, I only have an end every time I add in a new color for the first time.
Got it.
But after that, I can carry my yarn up.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So it doesn't create an inordinate amount of ends. There's another way to do mosaic crochet where you'll have a whole bunch of ends because you're actually changing color every row instead of every other row. I don't do it that way. A lot of those projects end up having like fringe or tassel or something to deal with all those ends. That's not how there's two ways to do mosaic. I do it what I consider to be the easy way. Always. So yeah, ends aren't going to be a significant issue. And so I'm ready to start my cardigan.
Now, you had another hand-dyed orange.
Yeah.
You decided against that one?
No, I was just practicing the border technique, so I only needed 2 colors.
Gotcha.
But now that I know it works, I can do it.
That's fabulous. I am excited about this one.
I don't know why.
You know what it is? I love how you are using the color, and I find it very inspirational for myself.
Okay.
Because your colors all seem to make sense, and when I try to do that, sometimes you look at my colors and you're like, Lisa.
Well, again, I am a big fan of color blocking, and I feel like color blocking is a good way to like fool the eye. So sometimes you have like 2 navy blue garments or 2 purple garments or even 2 black garments that are very similar, but they're not exactly the same. And when you put them next to each other, all you can see is how not the same color they are. So when I wear 2 pieces like that, I will always put a third color. So let's say I have a sweater and a pants that are 2 different shades of purple. I will put a white shirt underneath, layer it so that the white sticks out a little bit. And what I ended up having is almost like a monochromatic color block. So you have your one purple, your white, and then your other purple. And instead of focusing on how different the purples are, it's almost like you created like a gradient.
Yeah, you're transitioning.
Right. And so that's what I was thinking with these yarns, because they're very, very different from one another.
They are.
Technically, they don't actually go together. Yes, there's some orange in each one, but that's not really enough to make it work. So by bringing in a solid orange, again, I'm not trying to have these 2 oranges right up, the multicolored oranges right up next to each other and just pretending that they go together. Instead,
See, that's what I'd be doing.
and creating this color block effect that transitions the colors a lot better. So just, if you got 2 things that don't necessarily work, slap a third solid in between them, and 9 times out of 10, it fixes the problem.
So it's almost like you're creating a stepping stone to the other color.
Yeah. So it's just a little trick I use.
Cool.
Because the near matches drive me nuts. I had to come up with something. I was like, oh, this is gray and that's gray, but they're not the same gray. So that's just what I came up with.
Gotcha. So I don't have any knitting to show this week. I think I did 1 row on my sock, and that was during last week's sit and stitch. I have actually been working on my fuku during whatever crafting time I've had this week, and I find that the sewing has been very, very absorbing. So sometimes I've meant to let me just work on this for about an hour, and then when I picked up my head again, several hours had gone by and my neck hurts.
Oh.
So I'm going to work on that. So for those of you who were here last week, you know that I am kind of revising a jacket I made earlier in the year called the fuku jacket. Was it earlier in the year or last year? Might have been last year. I think it was a 2022 project. I started to like really wear it, and it was very kind of floppy. So I wanted to give it some more structure and support. So I'm adding a lining to it. Now, let me just give you guys a word to the wise. Generally speaking, if you're going to line a garment, do that before you sew it together. It should be some part of the planning of your garment. I'm putting in this lining as a fix. So rather than taking the entire thing apart, which I did consider, but calmer heads prevailed, and I would have had to taken out a good bit of the knitting because the edging was picked up and knit afterwards.
Oh.
So I didn't want to do all of that. So I decided to cut out my pieces based on the dimensions of each piece of the jacket. So I need a back, 2 fronts, and 2 sleeves. So here's where I am now. I have it turned out. So I have been working away. As you see, I've got my sleeves lined, my back and my fronts lined. Let me show you the 2 sleeves. So after I got the back and the fronts with the lining quilted onto it, now I'm just closing up the jacket. So I have the front closed, also quilted. And I've closed up this side. And I've sewn the back and front to the sleeve in the round.
I thought these seams were going to be hidden. I thought you were doing some sort of folding thing.
They are, but first you stitch it and then you cut off. I will be cutting off about half of this seam allowance on one side and folding the other piece over.
Okay.
And stitching that down.
On my hand?
Probably on my machine.
Okay.
But like
these seams though, did you do those by hand?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I did this by hand. I've done all the stitching so far by hand. And like round places like this, it would actually be easier for me because I haven't done any serious sewing in years. So my sewing machine skills are not what they once were. So once I got both fronts stitched down, let me just hold it up so we can pretend this is all together. I can now start completely enclosing the jacket. And I've tried it on. I like the fit better now personally myself. It sits more nicely on my shoulders and it's not constantly kind of falling back. So I will be finishing up the lining process. The last thing I'm going to do is cut off the excess and then hem the bottom. But that's where we are so far.
That's a lot.
And is this a perfect job? No. I have a little bit of wonkiness going on right here that I'm just pretending is not happening.
Be about my armpit.
Be up. Thank you. Yes, be up out my
We ain't got
armpit.
to examine all the crevices.
We really don't. The other nice thing is I did not sew in a whole bunch of ends. Now they're encased between the lining and the outer fabric. They'll never be seen again. And let me show you how she looks on the outside.
Now, did it add any like bulk? Do you feel like it's significantly like thicker or heavier?
It is heavier just because I added a whole nother fabric
Like,
to the inside.
Can you still wear this indoors?
Yes.
Or, okay.
because I went with this cotton because it's another breathable material. Had I gone with lining material, I think it would actually have been too hot to wear indoors. But I've got breathable wool backed by breathable cotton. And now it just holds its shape better. You see, I've got my excess fabric just hanging out. Now, the nice thing about this method of doing it after the fact is that I wasn't like super precious about cutting out the lining pieces. And I think that would have made me cut the lining pieces too small if I had been very exacting. So I knew I needed 3 pieces for the body and 2 for the sleeves. So when I took I got 3 yards of fabric. I held the fabric against the back first because that was my largest piece. And I planned for like 3 inches on each side overhang. And I just cut a rectangle. And then I cut 2 more rectangles for the fronts. Although my fronts are not rectangular, I just planned to cut off any excess. And as I stitched, it kind of drew the fabric in. So had I cut it closer to the shape from the outset, it would ended up being too small. I was a little skimpy on the sleeves, thinking, oh, the sleeve is not that much fabric. I ended up actually having to add a little fabric on one sleeve because as I stitched it in, because the sleeve is shaped, what is that shape? A trapezoid?
Yeah.
So it's wider at this end and it tapers towards the bottom. So at the widest width, I didn't have enough width after it was stitched. Although it was perfectly fine before I stitched it. I felt ill-used by this process. So if you're interested in sort of delving into this process a little bit, it is the process, one of the processes used for creating Chanel jackets. This was the way they lined many of the knit jackets or the loosely woven fabric jackets. So if you Google that, you will come up with some people who are either recreating those kinds of jackets or some information from the actual design house for how they do this. I guess they feel free talking about it because, you know, most of us aren't going to bother. But it was a good fix for this jacket. And I don't want to make something that I don't wear because it's a little off. So I'm all for going back and revising something you made that didn't quite work out. It's like how some of the things you made that you really like, you're remaking in a better yarn choice for it. You know, I think that's really a good way to not only get some use out of the garments you really spend a lot of time making, but it's made me feel much more confident that if something comes up and it didn't quite work out, I will be able to figure out a solution and make the thing a wearable thing, even if it doesn't mean, you know, it doesn't have to mean ripping it back down to string. Although I did consider that. But that's where she is now. I'm hoping by this time next week, I will have a completed lining all sewn together. What else we got, Chris?
Any questions?
Yes. We had a couple of questions in our comments. Oh, here we go. Marley says, Marley123451 says, I'm going to jump to the end of the comment, but I will be popping them in so you can read the whole thing. But basically, she says that it's easy to find patterns for knitting and that are easily translated into her closet, but she has a hard time finding patterns for crocheted garments that, you know, fit into her garment. And she won't necessarily look like a forest witch or somebody from a drum circle.
So I have several books I can recommend, but just a few. Actually started with this book. It's called The Crochet Closet. I made, I don't know, maybe like 3 of the things in here. Let me show you guys this. I made this jacket, which I absolutely love, even though I made it out of acrylic. But you see those pleats? I was terrified of this pattern for the longest time because I was like, you can't crochet pleats. And then when I did it, it turned out to actually be a lot simpler than I thought. And then I was like, oh snap, I crochet pleats. So this book, The Crochet Closet by Lisa Gentry, it's an excellent beginner book. The patterns are very simple, well written, easy to understand. You'll pick up some new techniques along the way, like this thing on the cover I made, set in sleeves. Eek, but I did it. This jacket on the back is actually the first crochet garment I ever tried to make. I finished it, it just didn't fit at all. It was super awkward, like in the shoulder. I don't know what happened, but it kept me encouraged enough to try making more garments. And so this book is probably the single biggest reason I make crochet garments right now. So I definitely recommend it. The patterns are simple, and I think with good yarn choice, even though they're a little like plain, I think you can dress them up a little bit. So this is a book I recommend for beginner crocheters all the time. The Crochet Closet by Lisa Gentry. Another good beginner book is Urban Edge by Shannon Mullet-Bowlesby. I've made a couple of these as well. But these are really, really cute. They're all mostly tops. I think there's like one dress and a skirt in here. Actually, there's a cute little thing that's like convertible, so you can wear it as a skirt, or you can like wrap it around your neck and make it like a big top. I can't find it right now, of course, but oh yeah, there it is, see? But you can also wear that around your waist. Let's see if there's another picture in here. Yeah, and here it's being worn as a skirt.
Okay.
But it's, now, Shannon Mullet-Bowlesby is like a premier pattern writer. You will always have charts. You will have charts for all of the stitch patterns being used. These are excellent. These are very, very well written patterns. Also just cute, simple things to make. So they're really great like confidence builders because you're doing very simple shapes, but I mean, look at the one on the cover. It just has a really nice overall effect.
Beautiful texture, yeah.
So it's another book that I absolutely recommend for beginners. Now, if you're a little further along in your crochet journey, or you just like a challenge, I recommend Designer Crochet, also by Shannon Mullet-Bowlesby, just because these garments are absolutely beautiful. There's a lot of really just pretty things in here. Some nice sweater dresses. This is one of the first crochet books I ever saw that had garments and fingering weight yarn. That's just something I wasn't seeing for crochet. It had, it was using, you know, nice brand. It was using brands of yarn like Malabrigo. I'd never seen Malabrigo being used in a crochet pattern book. Never saw designers working in fingering weight yarn for crochet. So this book, I mean, you see how thick it is? It's got a lot of stuff in here. This is just like a bunch of really nice patterns. There's stuff in here with zippers installed. There's little matching sets with like the jacket and like boot cuffs. And I mean, in terms of style, this is one of my absolute all-time favorite crochet pattern books. So if you're looking for garments, you just can't go wrong. So those are places I recommend starting. In terms of designers, there's also Dora Orenstein, there's Robin Chichula, there's Lily Chin, there's Doris Chan. These are all designers who are just making really nice, well-constructed garments. So, you know, I'll have all those names in the show notes so you can look them up. But trust me when I tell you, there are nice crochet garments out there. There really are. Probably have to look a little harder. In fact, I can't really recommend Ravelry for this. And the issue with Ravelry is that, people who are really making money from designing patterns, they have to work at quite a clip. They have to put out a lot of patterns over the course of a year. And that means that often they have to make things really simple. They can't invest the time in designing something that's going to be very complex, because they have to get that next pattern out and the next and next, because that's the pace the internet demands. So I will tend to recommend designers who have written books, just because they have time to do those more elaborate garments, or just to do things that aren't necessarily what's popular right now. They're not trying to get in the Ravelry, Hot 100 or whatever it is. So I tend to favor books over patterns from Ravelry, just because so much of the algorithm and what's popular is influencing that. That's just me. So if you're looking only on Ravelry, I see why you're having a problem finding the kinds of garments you're looking for, although they're there. Don't get me wrong. They are there.
But having the name of a designer to start with,
right,
would probably.
And I also recommend Linda Skuja. She just, I think, put out what I believe is her first book. She's also doing some gorgeous stuff, and you will find her very well represented on Ravelry.
Crochet Sweaters with a Texture Twist.
Yeah, that's her new book. But I'm a little ho-hum on Ravelry. But yeah, so those are some of the patterns and designers that I recommend for crochet garments. They're out there. You have to believe they are in fact out there.
You gotta believe. We have another question. This one's also from Marley. Marley wants to know, do you think your skirt will further expand once you blow it?
After I put in the elastic waistband, I'm not really terribly worried. Right now, I wouldn't get my skirt wet, because yes, I do think the side panels will expand. However, I blocked the pieces before I sewed it together, so I don't intend to block the skirt as a whole right now. I won't block it until, it needs cleaning and I soak it again. But right, would those side panels expand if I got that skirt wet right now? Yes. Because them granny squares played me.
They did.
They misrepresented themselves.
I think you ended up blocking them to something like closer to 5 inches, but they could have easily been 6-inch squares.
So they're 6. They're 6 right now, I think. It's something. The combination of the yarn I use and an open stitch pattern is the issue. If that had been like all single crochet, I don't think it would have been as aggressive as it is. But yeah, so she's not getting a dunk right now. Mm-mm.
You're not even gonna walk in the rain, are you?
No. But once the elastic waistband's in, that will hold that top square, which is the one that's really like holding the skirt up. That will hold that in tight enough that I don't think I'll have to really worry about that going forward. Are there any other questions?
No. Thank you guys so much for, chiming in. We love hearing from you guys in the comments. So if you have any questions or comments about what we talked about, let us know down below. You got anything else today?
I think that's about it. Oh, so I think it's next week we won't have an episode.
Oh, right.
Because we're not going to be filming the week of Thanksgiving. So there won't be an episode next week, but we'll be back the week after that.
Cool. We'll have to put some dates to that, and we can make an announcement. Because I don't know.
I know what day of the week it is.
If I don't have a calendar, I'm not one of those people that can go, oh, well, Friday, that's going to be the 19th.
Oh, wait. Oh, I have my iPad.
Oh.
Check that out. Okay, so there won't be an episode on Monday the 27th.
Okay, great.
But this episode will be posted on the 20th, and then the next episode will be December 4th. Calendars, dude. You'll never go out of style.
Never.
that's all for today.
Yes. Thank you for joining us.
And stay stitching.